All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another live stream. So today we are continuing from our previous live stream a little bit from when I'd started to build my own home lab. And today we're going to be focused on specifically setting up one of the Raspberry Pis that goes into this home lab. But first, just to level set with a little bit of context, now I'm not going to redo a full recap, of course, of everything that we covered in the last stream, but I do want to kind of share a little bit of context so you can kind of have a little bit of a refresher on how I'm approaching my home lab and how today's stream kind of fits into that. So I'm building my own home lab right now. Actually, you can see it over here with this thing. This is it right over here. It is not fully complete quite yet, but like I'm pretty much I have all the hardware purchased now, and have been setting up all the hardware, and so the hardware side of things is pretty much done. This stream will actually pretty much finish out the hardware side of things. Let me just go. So it might be hard to see. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to go ahead and show. I took a picture of it for you all here. Let me move my face. That's probably a good spot. So this is the home lab as it is sitting on my shelf back there. You can actually see Breath of the Wild link over here because I have like the Great Deku Tree Legend of Zelda Lego set off to the right over here. And then you can actually see a couple of amiibo poking out over here. So back here, that's Tom Nook, and then there's Timmy and Tommy Nook from the Animal Crossing series. And then you can't see this one with the red base, but this one with the red base is actually Toad. But anyway, so this is the home lab. By and large, this is very much what we covered last time. I think that I got a little bit further along in terms of like actually mounting this bottom grate thing here. And this bottom grate thing is really just a decorative piece. It really doesn't do anything. But what I want to highlight here is specifically this middle layer and then this bottom layer here. So this middle layer here is a Netgear switch. And this switch is doing two different things. It's a networking switch, that is. And so the first thing it's doing is it's obviously networking all of these Raspberry Pis together. So these four verticals represent each of the Raspberry Pis. And then you can see that I have these Ethernet cables. These are just 6-inch Ethernet cables that are connecting to each of the Raspberry Pis. And so it's actually providing power over Ethernet to each of these respective Raspberry Pis. Now, you'll notice by this picture here that you can see 1, 2, 3 Raspberry Pis, but you might have noticed there's a gap with this one over here, and that's the one that we're going to be setting up today. So I think that's all the context that I want to cover. Now, in case you're wondering what this is above here, this is a screen. I haven't got the screen quite... what's the word? The thing program that I want to display on the screen quite yet, but I'll get to that at a later point. But that is the cluster itself, the home lab itself. So let's actually just jump into things. Today actually might end up being a little bit of a shorter stream. So one thing I do want to highlight before I get into anything is that I am tracking all my work through this home lab repo. So if you come to my GitLab, or I'm sorry, I'm always going to screw that up because I use GitLab at work. When I come to my own personal GitHub, I do have this pinned up to the top as my repo, and I'm still making updates to this, but in the last stream, I had not completed the hardware list. So the hardware list is now complete with links to pretty much everything, rationale for why I purchased things, and I did include pricing on things, even though I fully expect these prices to change over time. So like, for example, like the Raspberry Pis themselves are not cheap. They used to be much cheaper, but as you all are probably aware, anything that involves any form of like computation or RAM has just shot through the roof in the last year or so with the advent of AI and such. So I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but if you want to check out all the hardware and stuff that we're going to be using today, all of the hardware is now completed as part of this table here up on my GitHub. So let's actually shift over to actually just jumping right into things. So I'm actually going to so last time you might have recalled that I did all my demo station on a table that I have sitting over here where I'm kind of pointing at right now. And I don't need as much space today, so I actually moved my demo station over to this side so you can see the cam that I'm touching right here, and then all the components that we're going to be working with over here. And that was really just it was a pain in the rear to move this whole mic stand setup, so I didn't want to have to do that again, so that's why it's over here this time. And again, I just don't need as much room. So I'm going to mute for a second, and then I'm going to shift this microphone over, and then we're going to begin our work over here. All right, mute. Okay, That camera's kind of far away, isn't it? That's okay. Let me go ahead and share things over here. So, by the way, if you have any questions, I'm taking any questions on YouTube or LinkedIn as we come along. But here is all the hardware that we're going to be working with today. So let's just touch on briefly what each of these things are, and then we'll get into these things more in depth. So this one you might recall from the previous stream. This is the mount that actually like mounts the Raspberry Pi itself and then slots into the Homelab itself. So nothing particularly special here. By default, whenever you purchase this thing from like Amazon or something, it doesn't come with these pins necessarily installed. But the pins are included. But then it also comes with some other stuff to mount the Raspberry Pi, but that stuff didn't necessarily fit, and that'll make sense here in a bit. So that's what this box is. So this box here is a pin extender that will actually help to mount the hat onto the Raspberry Pi. And let me pause for just a second. If things are a little bit confusing right now, if I'm using weird nomenclature or anything, I will make sure that everything's clear as we start to unbox these things and start to put everything together. So this is the hat extender stuff. Right here, this little chip thing that I'm holding in my hand, this is the NVMe SSD. So NVMe, I think that stands for non-volatile memory express card. So basically this is a very simple little hard drive. These hard drives are used in things like Steam Decks, or like I showed off my Microsoft Surface last time and showed that both of those are using this. And so this is an M.2 NVMe 2230. Now you may be wondering, well, what does 2230 mean? 2230 is really just a reference to the dimensions of this thing in millimeters. So I think this is 22 inches wide from this side to this side, and then 30 millimeters long. And you can actually get like a 22, like I can't remember what the dimensions are, but basically where it's a little bit longer than this, and I did not realize that before. So that is that. Inside this box is the hat plus fan combo, and you'll see that they're not actually, even though they come packaged as one thing and you purchase them as one thing, that it's not actually one like device itself. It's actually two completely separate devices. And then finally, of course, we have the meat and potatoes of this thing, the Raspberry Pi, which I have completely left. This is one that I've unsealed. So I'm a little bit nervous today because usually I like to set things up beforehand, test everything out, and then like take it all apart and then demo it. So you can see here, oops, sorry about that. You can see here that we are just jumping right into things by unboxing these things from scratch. And I just want, and that's for hopefully your all's benefit. So fingers crossed that nothing goes wrong today. So let's go ahead and unbox this Raspberry Pi, and you'll see that the Raspberry Pi itself basically comes with nothing included, aside from the Raspberry Pi itself. So here's the Raspberry Pi. Let me go ahead and get it out of its box. Set this aside here. Now you can see inside the box there's nothing inside of here. There's like some wording and instructions and some terms and conditions kind of thing, but by default a Raspberry Pi does not come with any sort of peripherals, including like a power cable or anything like that. And part of that assumes is that you will use like your own kind of hardware for managing your Raspberry Pi. So let's just touch on this really quickly. So now, I'm not super familiar with all the chips on here, but let's just touch on the peripherals. So on the end here, we have our Ethernet port, and then we have 4 USB-A ports. And you might notice that the 2 USB-A ports in the middle are blue. Generally speaking, when you see a blue USB, this is a common thing that you'll see on other laptops and desktops. Blue indicates a USB 3.0 port, which means generally it's a little bit faster. So if we flip this thing on its side now, then we've got 3 more ports over here. We have a USB-C port, and then we have 2 micro HDMI ports. Do not confuse micro HDMI with mini HDMI. Yes, there is a difference. A mini HDMI is, so, no, I don't have I was going to show off a standard USB cable, but I don't have one right in front of me. But a micro, so you could see how tiny these micro HDMI ports are. A mini HDMI port is the same like height or squattiness, I guess, of a micro SD port, micro HDMI. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna keep messing that up. And but it's a little bit wider. Actually, so like my portable monitor that I carry around with me does use a mini HDMI cable as opposed to a micro HDMI cable. So those are the ports on the side. I do want to show the one thing here on the bottom, although we're not going to end up using it. And so that is, there's a slot right here that I'm pointing at. So this slot is actually a micro SD card slot. And so you could actually, in theory, have all of the operating system and stuff boot from a micro SD card. And I actually do that from, do I have it sitting around right here? I actually think it might be in my desk right here. Let me see. Yeah. So this is my Raspberry Pi 4 right here. And so at the bottom here, I actually am using a micro SD. Wait, where is it? It's not in there. I don't know what I did with it. Okay, but typically speaking, there is a micro SD card that slots into there. But that's not generally best practice if you're wanting to use these for like a true purpose, like building our own home lab. So we are actually going to use, again, the NVMe, and we will image this NVMe a little bit, but we're going to focus stick with the hardware for now. So this is, oops, sorry, this is the Raspberry Pi again itself. Now, generally speaking, the power comes from this USB-C slot here. So you can you would generally plug in just, you know, a typical USB-C cable that you're used to. But as you know, we are going to be powering everything from the Ethernet port right here. Now, something to be aware of is by default, a Raspberry Pi cannot be powered on by the Ethernet port. What we actually have to do instead is, so it might be kind of hard to see here, but what I'm pointing at, this black square piece right here with these 4 pins, this actually is a pit, like a couple of pins that will connect up into the hat, and we'll show the hat here in a little bit. And this is actually what provides power. And this was a really stupid gotcha that I found, because so you can see on the side over here with all these other pins that this is like the general like pin peripheral connection that Raspberry Pis use more often. It's just that, so I was focused on this thinking that for some reason that this was providing the power over Ethernet part. No, it's actually this piece right here. And I don't know if I can turn it. Yeah, if I turn it to the side, you can kind of see the 4 pins a little bit better there. So we do need to be careful about that. And then all these other chips are, I'm not exactly sure which one's which. I don't know if this is the CPU or if this is the CPU. But basically, like, you got your CPU and RAM and stuff in here. And again, this is a Raspberry Pi 5. This has 8 gigabytes inside of it. It does not indicate anywhere on here that this is 8 gigabyte, which is why, again, I with my label maker, I made my own label here to kind of help myself remember the hardware associated here. So that's that. Now let me look at my notes here. Okay, so that's basically. Oh, one more thing here. Yes, I forgot. Well, 2 more things I should point out on the Raspberry Pi itself. The first one here is where I'm tapping, like right here. This piece right here. This is a ribbon connector that we'll actually slide in this ribbon cable into here that actually connects up into the hat to help facilitate that crosstalk between the Raspberry Pi and the NVMe SSD. And then there was one more. Oh yes, this white part over here that I'm tapping on. This white part. So this is actually a lid right here. I'm gonna go ahead and take it off because I don't need it on here. If I can take it off. Come on. Some of these things are kind of hard to fiddle around with because they're really, really tiny. Okay, I took it off. There we go. And so what this is here is this is actually going to provide the power for the fan itself. So this little cap here that I just took off, I personally am never going to need this again. So boop, just threw it in the trash. I got a trash can over here behind me. And so I think that's the Raspberry Pi itself. So something to keep in mind with the Raspberry Pi is that it does not automatically come with any sort of operating system installed onto it. And so the reason I note that is because you might be familiar, you might be more familiar with, purchasing any sort of, a MacBook or a Windows laptop off the shelf, and it comes pre-baked with, the Windows operating system or the Mac OS operating system, or if you're using a Chromebook, it's coming with Chrome OS. So that is why we actually need to image our NVMe SSD here with the Raspberry Pi OS. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the Raspberry Pi OS. I'm landing on that because The Raspberry Pi OS is basically a flavoring of the Linux operating system. So I think it is possible to use other sort of Linux operating systems as well. It's just that whenever it comes to getting up and going with the Raspberry Pi, using the Raspberry Pi OS is actually very easy to get up and going with, and we'll demonstrate that here in a little bit. So let's set aside, I can throw away this little box here because I don't need this box anymore. All right, so let's set that aside. Now let's move into, let's unbox, what do I want to unbox first? Let's unbox the extenders here. So this is a 2-pack here. So there's actually 2 sets of extenders here in case you have more than one Raspberry Pi. So I'm just going to take that out, set this box to the side for what my other spare one. I'll put that in my other spare kits part. And let's pull a couple things out of here. There's basically the hat extender, or the pin extenders, and a couple of these pins. Let me pull out those pins. Did it not come with screws? Oh yeah, the screws are in the hat kit. That's okay. Okay, so let's touch on these really quick. So with the Raspberry Pi here itself, so what you're going to see here in a minute is that we will actually be mounting an active cooling fan right on top of like this general section that I'm pointing at. And then we are going to need to put the hat over it. So by default, if we were to just try to put the hat on top, it would fit. Except it's just that like if you put that fan and then you want to put the hat over the fan, then these pins by themselves are not tall enough. So that is what this is for. And I'll show it here in a minute, but basically, like, so the hat itself, the hat box that we'll be unboxing here in a little bit, does have a pin extender. It's just way too tall for trying to fit it into my actual Homelab itself. So that's why I bought one that's still tall enough to properly mount the hat over the fan, but short enough that it's going to fit inside of the case that I'm using. So the way that you just get this on here, you got to be careful because these pins are really easy to bend. I just slide it on here, and then I will do kind of like this rocking back and forth motion because we want to be really careful that we're not placing too much pressure on any of these peripherals or any of these chips on the actual Raspberry Pi itself. So I just kind of wiggle it back and forth until it's on there. And so there's that part. Now, again, as I was talking about before, the piece that really hung me up was I couldn't figure out why the power over Ethernet wasn't working. And the reason is because I did not realize, like I did see this part coming out of the box, but I didn't realize what it was for. And then this is for the extender over these pins that help to support the power over Ethernet there. So I'm going to slide that on there. And then we have the pins themselves. So these pins will help to mount this, and then to like my other mount over here. Now you might be wondering, well, why did I only pull out 3 and not all 4? And if you caught the previous stream, the reason for that is trying to get all these pins in place and trying to mount the hat in place. It actually doesn't fit quite perfectly. It's still good enough, but like this hole over here in particular, it just becomes like whenever we get the power cable plugged in for the fan itself, it just kind of makes it really, really hard to get that pin in there, so I didn't even bother putting it in. So the way this mounts to here then is pretty straightforward then. We're just going to put this over that, and then we're going to take each of these pins that it came with, and then finger tight screw them on. And then it's just as simple as, you know, making sure the holes are aligned, and then screwing this on. This actually might have been easier if I would have done this first and then put on these pin extenders, but here we are. Okay. So there's one. Is that even going in? All right. Yeah, I'm really regretting. In fact, I'm going to take this off if I can, because it's just a big pain in the neck right now. There we go. We'll put that back on in here in a second. Okay. There is the one. Just about. All right, then we'll put on this next one here in the back corner. Come on. I know you. This is such a riveting stream, watching me screw things into this. But I just wanted to make it extra clear because I made a lot of really stupid little gotchas along the way, and that's the whole onus behind this stream, is just trying to help you if you're interested in building a home lab like myself, working through those mistakes that I made, so you don't make the same mistakes that I made. And then this one will go on to this side. Like so. And then we'll put this guy back on here. Boom. Okay. Now, let us get out our next box here. So our next box is going to actually have, let's set aside the Pi and the mount for a second. Now, you might be noticed I've been using this little screwdriver to kind of point at things, and that was because I noticed that like it was just really hard to point at things with my big fingers in the previous stream. And so this little screwdriver is actually what we use to screw in the screws that will actually help mount the hat to the Raspberry Pi itself. And so you'll see when we unbox this that there's actually, I'll get another one of these little things inside of there. All right, so this is what I was talking about when I said this is actually two different components. So you can actually see this active cooler here. This is the standard Raspberry Pi fan. You can buy this separately. Now, the combo that I bought on Amazon came with both of these, and in the picture almost makes it look like they are two different things, but this is actually a completely separate component from the hat itself. So let's go ahead and pull the hat itself out. The hat itself comes inside of this box, or I'm sorry, inside of this bag. And so we need to... do I want to do the hat for? No, let's stick with the fan. So let's go ahead and unbox the fan here, and call a couple things out with the fan. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, so here is the active fan itself. So you'll notice that we have this cable that provides power to the fan that we will plug into that little white slot that we were showing right beside some of the USB-A ports. And then you'll notice on the bottom here that it's actually got like a piece of wax paper. And the reason for the wax paper here is, you can kind of see it right here where we have like 4 little squares here. This is actually thermal paste right here. And so thermal paste helps to with heat dissipation and stuff. So actually this fan itself actually does not screw at all onto the Raspberry Pi. I think the thermal paste kind of helps to keep it in place a little bit, but you might notice these like springy pins here on the corner and such. These springy pins just help you, like if you needed to pull off the fan for whatever reason, then it helps you to dislodge the mount. The fan appropriately. So first, before I rip off that wax paper, let's go ahead and plug, again, this power cable is going to plug into this slot right here that I'm touching my little screwdriver to. So let's go ahead and connect that. It only goes in one way. And if you don't get it right the first time, then you might have to flip it upside down because I probably have it on the wrong way. There we go. There we go. Okay, so now it's in there. Now I can go ahead and rip off the wax paper. So then you can get a better look at these little 4 squares that represent our thermal paste here. So obviously the idea is that you want to get these in line directly over the chip. So like this one, for example, is going to mount like right over this silver part. And then we have like this one that's going to mount over this part right over here. And so let's go ahead and add the fan on top here then. So it's as simple as lining everything up appropriately, and then just giving a little bit of gentle force just to kind of squeeze that those thermal paste squares onto there. I'm not using excessive force by any means here. And that is that. So that is good. So let us move into actually showing off the hat itself. So like, all right, so that's trash. I'll just set that here for now, and then I'll clean things up later. So let's go ahead and unbox or unbag the hat here. Ooh, I didn't mean to tear open the bag like that. That's okay. And like I was mentioning, boom, another little screwdriver like I've been playing around with. And then we have the hat itself. And then we have a bag of like screws. And then okay, so here, let me pull this out first so it's better for you to see, or easier for you to see. So this is the pin extender that it comes with. Sometimes these screws get like stuck up in like those pins. Let me move those screws out of the way. And then, yeah, so you can see that this is just way too tall. So in terms of like my, like mounting this to my actual like case itself, basically these pins cannot extend beyond this line that I'm rubbing alongside here. And so if you can see, if I were to try to use this, then these pins would extend well beyond this top edge, meaning that it wouldn't fit properly inside the case that I purchased, hence why I needed to buy the separate pin extender set. So again, it does come included with a pin extender, it's just that this one's way too big for what I need. Okay, so that's that. Now, okay, so we have some screws and some additional pins. These pins, again, were just by default too tall for what I needed, and then there's a couple of extra screws inside of this bag as well. And then finally, it actually comes with 2 ribbons here. You only need, or I think I only needed 1. So this is the ribbon that's actually going to connect from the Raspberry Pi itself to the hat. And so it might be really hard. It's probably hard to see in my camera here, because this display camera that I'm using right now is a 1080p old web camera that I just had lying around, and so it's not perfect. But you can see as I'm tapping here, there's actually the words that I can read to RPi 5, and then over on this side it says to hat, and that's on purpose. So you actually have to make sure that the correct end is plugged into the correct peripheral. And then before I actually go connecting that ribbon, let me just show off the hat here. So this is the hat, and the hat is helping to facilitate 2 things here. Number 1 is the power over Ethernet, like I was saying. And so you can see that whenever we mount this on the Raspberry Pi, it's going to come up, the 4-pin connector is going to come up through these holes that over here that I am tapping on for the power over Ethernet. And then we have this strip over here that's also helping to facilitate other things. I actually don't know what this is helping to facilitate, to be honest. But let us, yeah, so let's go ahead and start connecting the ribbon and start connecting the this whole thing up to the Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to first connect the ribbon to the Raspberry Pi. Now, something to be very careful with here is that this little piece here, in order to connect the ribbon up, you actually have to lift. There's like it's like a lighter tan part, so you can kind of see the lighter tan part here, and then there's like this darker brown piece, and this darker brown piece is like a little lever that's kind of helping to hold the ribbon in place. You have to lift it up a little bit to be able to slide the ribbon in, but you don't want to use too much force, because then you could accidentally rip it off. And I know that maybe from experience. I accidentally ripped it off on one of the other ones. I was able to fix it, but I have learned my lesson the hard way. Be very careful whenever actually trying to put this in here. So I'm going to go ahead and slide it in here, and then to lock it in place is just pushing this darker brown piece back down. So now that ribbon is connected there. It's a little bit different on the hat itself. So on the Pi itself, you actually have to lift it up, like directly upwards, whereas with the hat, it's so we're actually connecting the hat up ribbon up through this part that I'm touching right here, and there's like this. So again, the lighter tan piece, and there's like this black lever. So this black lever actually hinges like outward in order to like lock and unlock the ribbon in place here. So I just unlocked it there, and then I'm going to slide that into here like so, and then I'm going to lock it back down like so, and then we are ready to actually mount this thing up, to place this onto the Raspberry Pi itself. So you just need to make sure all the holes are aligned appropriately. Again, got to be very careful because these pins do bend rather easily, so don't go pressing down too firmly until you know that everything is aligned up appropriately. So there's that. I think everything is lined up. Let me make sure. All right, and it just slid right on there. Now it does come with, like I was showing in the previous stream, it might be hard to see, but there's a little bit of a gap here, meaning that like the screws that it came with are not going to be able to like sufficiently mount this in place. But the pin extender itself is kind of a like a secure mount by itself. So I'm only going to put a screw here and a screw here to actually mount this in place. And I'll be honest, it's going to like tilt downward a little bit. I don't know if it might be hard to tell over the camera here, but it's actually slanted downward. And that's just a a little bit of a gotcha. It's not a big deal. So again, we can take the screws that it came with, that the hat came with, and use this little screwdriver to screw these down in place. So I put one there. I'm going to put another one over here. Oh gosh. I don't think that went in there. No, it did not. Okay, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about it. Because, I mean, like, I'm concerned with things being properly secured, but, like, if like, so I'm just holding this whole thing up by the hat itself. It's pretty dang secured, so I'm not really overly worried about getting too many screws to mount this thing in place. Now, so we talked we talked about how this hat helps to facilitate with the power over Ethernet, and again, that's being facilitated by these 4 ports, or these 4 pins over here, and then this silver part here is the Ethernet port itself. Now you'll notice here where it says like this 52 pi thing here. This is actually where our NVMe slots in. And so you can see here, as we're talking about, it shows the numbers 2230. So this will actually support a 2230 or a 2242. And again, so those numbers just refer to the width and length. So the width is 22 millimeters, and then the length is like 30 millimeters. And again, they do make variants of this NVMe SSD that are a little bit longer, and there are some that are even longer than this. Now, this particular hat won't do one that's even longer. There actually are hats that will do extend well beyond that. But one thing I do want to call out here is you might notice that there's like this little hole that I'm tapping on right here. And as we slide this NVMe into this slot over here, that helps to kind of secure it in place, because if I were to just slide it in and then like shake the Raspberry Pi a little bit, I could actually probably shake it out. Yeah, that would not be ideal. And especially whenever I mount this up into the cluster itself, or my case, then we really want to make sure that SSD is in place. But by and large, that is the assembly of the Raspberry Pi in terms of the hardware. Now, I'm not going to slide in the NVMe yet, because now we need to, like we were mentioning before, these Raspberry Pis do not come automatically installed with any form of operating system. So we need to actually image our SSD here with the Raspberry Pi OS. And so what I'm going to use here is, this is an accessory to help do that. So this outer part here is really just like a case for when it's not in use. But this is it right here. So you can see it actually supports a number of different of these M.2 and NVMe SSD sizes. So simply put, I can just slide this in here and then make sure it kind of clicks in place. Now, you might notice it's kind of like sticking up a little bit, and that's the other reason why we want to mount or use that screw to mount it, this in place appropriately here, because for some reason these SSDs that I bought, they kind of tend to flare out like that. Now for the imaging itself, it's not a big deal, so I'm not going to worry about it. But the way that this actually connects to my MacBook then is there's a USB-C port on here. So I'm actually going to plug this in here, and then I'm going to slide back over to the Mac, and then we're going to actually demonstrate how to image this SSD. All right, so let me mute, and we will slide over. Okay, by the way, I can't remember if I mentioned, but if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I will be able to help answer them. LinkedIn or YouTube. Okay, let me share my screen again. All right, so the way to image the Raspberry Pi OS is actually really easy because Raspberry Pi provides an imager that is very easy to get up and going with. So if we come to this website over here, you can simply just Google Raspberry Pi imager. So you can see that you can download the imager for Mac OS or Windows or Linux. And so then obviously I already have it installed on my computer. So then I can just go in here, and then you could see that I've already got the icon represented right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Open on my other screen. Let me drag it up here. All right, so the first thing it's going to ask for is which Raspberry Pi type are you using? And obviously we are using the Raspberry Pi 5. So I'm going to click that, click next. It's going to ask it which version, like which specific flavoring of Raspberry Pi OS you want. Generally speaking, the first one at the top is the one that we want, and you can see that it's cached on my computer, so that's the one we'll be making use of. Now you can see that it is already recognizing through my NVMe adapter USB thing, or USB to NVMe adapter, that it's already recognizing my NVMe over here, so I can simply click that as the storage device that I want to use. Now you can give a specific name to what you actually want this host name to be for your Raspberry Pi. So this will be actually worker number 2 for me, because I already did. So I have the controller, I have a worker 1, 1, 2, and 3. I already did 1 and 3. There's a reason why I did the third one already and not the second one. But anyway, so I'm going to call mine DK Hunley Homelab worker 2. And then you select your time zone here, so you can see that I've already, like by default, I can't remember what the default is, but I did have to dig through here and find the appropriate time zone for me. I'm in Illinois, not too terribly far away from Chicago, so I am selecting the Chicago time zone. Now it's going to ask you what username and password that you want, so I'm going to go ahead and put in a password that I'm going to use. Obviously you can't see it as it was masked there. And then the next thing it's going to ask you for is you can actually have this set up to where whenever you boot up for the first time, it would automatically recognize your Wi-Fi network. So that up there is my Wi-Fi network name, Hunley Home. And so I'm going to put in the my Wi-Fi router password right here, and then again. And it looks like I did not. Here, I'm going to move this down on my screen because I want to make sure. I want to see what okay, I accidentally capitalized something there. So let me hide those again. Let me bring this back up. Okay, so now that should be good. Now I am going to enable SSH. And by the way, one thing I should have mentioned at the outset of the stream is I am setting the Raspberry Pi up one way. I may choose to kind of do things a different way going forward as I get deeper into this. Basically, the way I'm approaching this is I recognize that I'm kind of approaching things from a software angle from a naive perspective, and so I'm kind of okay with the naive perspective because I can always blow these things away and reconfigure them for a maybe like a more streamlined or an optimized perspective. So I'm not going to worry too terribly much about getting things wrong right now, because I know this works. I just don't know if it's the ideal way. So I am going to enable SSH, and I am just going to use password as the authentication. Now, I am going to enable Raspberry Pi Connect, and this is really interesting. So Raspberry Pi Connect is basically like this online service that you connect through. Like if you create an account on the Raspberry Pi website, then using Raspberry Pi Connect, we can actually remote into our Raspberry Pi through this website. Now, my preference is going to be SSH, of course, but this is actually still really nice because SSH only works through the command line, whereas Raspberry Pi Connect, if for whatever reason, if you wanted to, you could actually look at the user interface of your Raspberry Pi from a local machine. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle this to on. Now, in order to actually get it to work, you do need like an authentication token. So the way that we do that is we're going to open up the Raspberry Pi Connect here. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in with my credentials. I'm going to go ahead and create the auth key, and then it's going to go ahead. It should. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I got to click allow, then click next, and then so it just went ahead and populated that. Now I think it revealed my authentication key here. So after the stream, I'm going to undo that and then redo it with a new authentication key, and then I'm gonna go ahead and write. So it's gonna probably prompt me for my password here. Yeah, it's gonna prompt me for my computer password, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we just wait here for a couple minutes, and then we should be good to go. That's how easy it is to image one of these things. And keep in mind, as we were mentioning before, you can use a micro SD card with your Raspberry Pi, and it's the same process. Now, obviously, you need a different adapter to be able to connect from USB-C to micro SD, but otherwise, using the imager works the exact same way. So this will take a couple minutes. It doesn't take too terribly long, so we'll just hit here and wait for this to finish. and then we will I'll go ahead and connect it up like I'm connecting it up to a monitor, and then I will demonstrate how the power over Ethernet works, and then we will round out the stream. So today's going to be a little bit of a shorter stream, and that's okay. Sometimes I feel like my streams run really long. It's already running longer than I thought it would so far, so we'll give it a minute. Let me take a sip of my drink. Today's drink is I've been trying to drink a lot more water recently as opposed to like Diet Coke, which I still have Diet Coke. So I've been really my favorite flavor is grape, and I like the Gatorade Zero packets. The Propel ones are also not bad. But yeah, that's what this is. The only downside about like this plastic cup here is that it sweats really bad. And so it's making a puddle here on my, like I use coasters on my desk, but it's making a puddle on my coaster over here. All right. I didn't even check to make sure that my audio is working. Okay, my audio is working. For some reason, earlier this morning, my microphone was not appropriately connecting to my computer, but sounds like that was resolved. I just checked it right now. Okay, we'll give it another minute. Hopefully this will complete here soon. Now, when I guess one thing to call out whenever I'm pull the SSD out is that the SSD actually gets pretty hot whenever you're using it. So just be careful that you don't burn yourself. Now it's not like super hot, I'm gonna be at risk for third-degree burns kind of thing. It's just a matter of like you don't want to grab it necessarily from the flat sides. You want to grab it from the edges to kind of avoid burning your fingers a little bit there. But so after the writing step here, it will go through a verification process, which is a little bit faster than the writing part. So hopefully it'll complete here shortly. All right, we are moving into verifying. And the way I'm actually going to connect, so like I mentioned that we're going to just power up this Raspberry Pi as if it is connected to a monitor, as if it's its own computer. And so I'm actually going to be using, so it's probably hard to tell, but this white cable here that I'm holding is actually a capture card. Well, that's what this end here. So like if you were like a gamer or something and you wanted to just like stream on Twitch or whatever, then you could plug this end here plugs into any HDMI slot. Now I've obviously got an adapter on it that will work with micro SD as well. And you might be wondering, well, why do I have this thing? And that's because I have an Apple Vision Pro sitting back behind me, and I really like to play video games. And I also have a Mac Mini, and so an Apple Vision Pro cannot directly connect to any sort of like HDMI device. However, if the cheating way that I found around it, cheating way, is that if I use a capture card and connect basically like a gaming console like my Switch 2 or my PS5 to the Mac Mini, and then I can stream through my Vision Pro, the Mac Mini, then I can play video games directly on my Vision Pro that way. So that is why I have this thing, and it is coming in handy for today's stream. And I'm only mentioning that right now just to kill time. Because not that this takes, this imaging part takes a long time, but it's taking long enough that I feel like I gotta fill the dead air with saying something. It'll be done here in the next minute or so. And then it automatically ejects itself too whenever it's done writing, so we can immediately pull it out. All right. So I'll take another sip here. Come on. I don't know if I could skip verification or not, in case you're wondering. Like I'm not, just to be on the safe side, because again, this whole process really does not take that long, and we are just about done here. Finalizing. All right, it is done. So now I can click finish, and now I can remove. All right, let me go ahead back to the demo station. All right, let me move my mic again. I'm going to mute for a second. Okay, so we are back at the demo station here, so I can simply just unplug this, and this is what I was talking about. It's pretty hot right now, so I don't want to grab it from this side. I want to grab it from the edges here to kind of avoid that heat. It's again, not overly hot, but just hot enough. And so now I can slide this into the hat here. And then I can use my little screwdriver plus my screw here to actually, because you can kind of see it's flared out and popped out a little bit, to actually like secure it into place. It's really hard to work with these really tiny little screws with big fingers. It doesn't need to be tight on there. Okay, so now it's in place, and that's basically the entire thing. So let's go ahead and plug this into power. And so I got a power cable over here. And so right now I'm just going to power on through the standard USB-C port, like so. And then I am going to plug in my capture card thing to actually be able to show it on my screen through here. There's that. And I'm going to plug in a mouse. So I got a standard, just a USB-C, old school USB-C. It's not really old school, but just a standard HP mouse here into one of these peripherals. And I don't necessarily need a keyboard plugged in, although I do have a keyboard off to the side in case I need to. So I'm going to plug that in there. All right, so now let's go back to my Mac. All right, give me a second. I'm going to switch on over. All right, we are back to the Mac. Now it should be showing up on my capture card. Oh, did I? Oh, yeah, that's right. All right, so let me open up Genki, because this is my capture card is a Genki Shadowcast. All right, and I can see it. Can I drag this up? Why won't it drag up? So I can see it on my screen. Why will this not show up here? Gang. Oh, shoot. Why will this not go up there? I can see the display on my screen. For some reason, it's just not. It was working earlier today. I wonder if here, let me unplug this whole thing. Okay, maybe if I do this and then move this up to here. Okay, that worked. All right, now let me replug this back in. So this is the Genki Shadowcast software. All right, so now if I plug it in, let me see if I need to re-unplug this. Well, what the heck? Let me try restarting this again. Okay, well, I assure you it was working before. I wonder if I just need to try to change the resolution or what. Well, what the heck? Okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually show the screen, and that's just like an issue with my Genki Shadowcast, but I can assure you it's working. So let's actually just go ahead and SSH into it. And so recall again that we called this the worker 2. I'm still here. Let me try one more time because I really wanted to get that working. Okay, let me try unplugging this again. Plug this back in. All right, I'm going to do something really quick. I'm going to go, so let me actually SSH into this. I'm going to say SSH. This is actually going to be Homelab worker number 2. Connection refused. That's interesting. Okay. I don't know if I did something wrong. I'm powering it off and powering it back on again. Hopefully that'll fix things. Although I'm scared to do this because this is one of the gotchas that I ran into, is that if you didn't let the Raspberry Pi like boot up fully, the first time I booted it up and then I unplugged it, it like somehow like corrupted the like the SSD, and then I had to re-image everything. So I'm hoping I don't run into that issue again here. Oh wait, I saw something there. I think this is the... Okay, so this is the Raspberry Pi itself, but I am scared that... Yeah, this is what happened whenever I imaged it the first time and it didn't want to work. And so, shoot. This is what you get whenever you try to live do something. But I think that's kind of okay because I do have the other 3 Raspberry Pis working just fine. And so, yeah, this is the problem that I was running in before. But anyway, I can show with one of the other Raspberry Pis at least. So, so I'm going to go into worker 3 instead. And so worker 3, and then so now I am SSH'd into one of the Raspberry Pis that's actually connected to my cluster. So, but everything that I did was correct. It's just a matter of like I ran into this exact same issue before, and then my fix for it was I simply just had to re-image the entire thing, which I don't think I want to do right now. But otherwise it's working. Actually, I do want to show off Raspberry Pi Connect though, while I'm here. So Raspberry Pi Connect, so you can just go to the website up here. I can sign in. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in with my ID, and you can see that I've got at least 3 of my Raspberry Pis that are currently working. So what we should have been seeing is, so now if I want to go into screen sharing, so like I can go into the controller Raspberry Pi, and then it will show like the desktop view of the Raspberry Pi. So this is the default Raspberry Pi desktop view. And so you can see like the Raspberry Pi Connect works pretty well if I wanted to just like I don't have any reason to actually want to go into like the user interface itself, but it is working. And so all the steps that I took should have worked. I think the problem I had was just that I got a little bit antsy and unplugged my Raspberry Pi too soon, trying to get this stupid capture card thing working. So I think the only thing I'm gonna have to do is I'm just gonna have to do a re-imaging of that NVMe, and I should be fine. I am mildly irritated right now, but generally speaking, we got through everything that I wanted to cover today. But just be aware, the very first time you boot up a Raspberry Pi, then you may run into the same issue that I ran into. And then it should work right out of the box, like after you get the NVMe SSD kind of set up. Now, right now, I am powered on through USB-C, but I should be able to power on through the Ethernet, no problem now, just plugging in the Ethernet cable. But yeah, as you can see, this is not working. Wait. Oh, that's because I don't actually have that thing plugged in. Okay, but that's okay. I think that's all I want to cover for today. A little bit disappointed that, like, you know, not everything was perfect, but I know the issue because I've seen this before. And I hope you get a sense of the gotchas that you can run into too, especially after you see me running into the things. So I'm going to call the stream there. I don't have anything else I want to cover, so hope you all enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next stream. Have a good afternoon.